I think that if you look at like the transition from boomer to millennial, we kind of threw an error in the blockchain of humanity because of fiat currency. So suddenly there started to be this new idea that we're going to like live now at the expense of the future and sell our children into debt slavery. And like, we'll figure it out because of deflationary technological progress or infinity immigration or some sort of fiat money printing game that erodes GDP in a soft default type setting. Like all these ideas are abhorrent. They're anti-human. They're anti-progress. They bring us backwards, and we don't have to accept that, right? And so I don't accept that. And so when I do think about setting the world right, pushing value into the future, I think it starts with me. And I have to believe in myself, believe I have a future so that I can believe I can create a future for others, and then they can create a future for others, and so on and so on. And so, yeah, I mean, loving yourself really is radical and transformative in that way, and not giving into nihilism, because that act ripples outward into eternity. You know, what we do in life echoes in eternity in a very real and meaningful sense, not in a metaphysical sense, in a literal physical sense, you know?
I don't know if it was Greenpeace that started with a better world starts with yourself, but it's so funny that it's so corny and so true.
And then they ended with Skull of Satoshi. So they're not doing so good nowadays.
Yeah. I'm thinking about what you said, this drive towards creating this progeny and then realizing that the life is not about you, just having a child. In general, I think is also a very spiritual experience that you get to manifest another human into the physical world is insane. I had to think of that social part there. It's like you're obligated to do that, right? Or it's asked from you in this biological way, this urge that we have. And when you compared it to Bitcoin, I had to think about, well, actually Bitcoin urges you to contribute to it, to like follow the rules because everyone else is following the rules, right? Like there's like an unwritten social contract in Bitcoin where if you follow the rules, you will be able to gain value from what Bitcoin can give you. And yeah, that is enforced, air quotes, enforced in a certain way, but in a very positive way. Like, yeah, you're forced to follow the rules or else you cannot take any value from it. And I like it that you can try to game the rules, but that you will never get any value from it. But that in Bitcoin, it's not really possible to game the rules, but in the fiat world, it is, right? And so you see that by gaming the rules, by corrupting the system, there are now actually people that don't have children because they aren't able to, right? Or they have this very nihilistic outlook towards the future. And when I think about that, I think it's a very sad thought that something that is man-made and just created, right? Fiat money system and all these, things that could help it keep it afloat, basically mess up this biological human behavior of procreation. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that, I thought like, wow, that is the size of the battle, I'd say, that we are in, right? Because I mean, I wonder how you feel about it, but sometimes I think I don't know if I would be this chill without Bitcoin if I didn't have Bitcoin right now. Well, maybe I would also be very nihilistic.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I think that people who aren't in Bitcoin might not know this. Also, if you're not in Bitcoin, you're probably not watching this podcast. But if you are, like, you might not know this.
I hope to find new people.
When I go out and talk to regular friends who are millennials, because that's my cohort, my peer group, the conversation is always very, kids are expensive. It's hard. Things are hard. Well, we think we want to have 3 children, but we're just going to stop at 1, because we just don't know if we can afford it. Or she wants, to have another one and I don't. And it's because of, the money and this and that. And then I talk to Bitcoiners. I go to Bitcoin, parties or meetups or whatever. And Bitcoiners are like, oh, what's up, dude? Oh, you're having another? That's awesome.
Yeah, they're all pregnant.
Right. Everyone's pregnant. Everyone is having kids. Everyone is excited about the future. Bitcoiners are comparing numbers of children. They're like, oh, how many do you have? You have 3. I have 4. Oh, I need to catch up to you, whatever. Which is just this very, when you think about it from this perspective, okay, I'm not judging anybody who doesn't have children, because first of all, some people can't have children, but I do think it's a mistake if you can physically and biologically have children to not have children. And the reason why I personally think that's a mistake is because when you don't have children, as you age, everyone that you know dies. Okay. And your partners are going to die. You know, your spouse is going to die. Your lovers, your friends, the people you know around you, and everyone will just slowly decay and die. And so the entire world, you know, is just eroding in front of you, even if you live to some very old age, right? Whereas if you have children, then they have children and they have children. And you're going to be around to see all these different generations, and you know, life begets life begets life. And so you're an important and integral part of the story of the generations that have come after you. You're not just some person who lives in a care home who has to be taken care of by, you know, some care
Random.
worker. Right. Yeah. Just some random, probably a person who doesn't even speak your language because they've been imported in from a different country so that them and their children can have a better quality of life. Right. So like, that's a very sad idea and sad thought to me, to be constantly surrounded by death. Whereas when you're surrounded by more life going forward, you're more engaged in your own life and the life of others, and you're more connected and present. And people say, well, I can do all that without being a father or a mother. And I just personally don't know that you can, or that I think it's very difficult, and maybe like 0.1% of people could feel okay without doing that. But for me, I think the average person, 99.9% of humanity, needs to engage in that to have meaning in their life, because it's the most important thing you can do, is to push value forward into the future, push knowledge, push value, I mean, everything I see that's like about child-free life or whatever is like people drinking in different locations.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh yeah, I went to Hawaii and I drank, and then I went to Thailand and I drank, and then I went to New York and I drank, and then I went to Paris and I drank alcohol. And it's like, that's meaningless, dude. That's a totally meaningless existence, and empty and vacant, and you're numbing yourself and you don't realize it. And when you have children, you think to yourself, all I want to do is stay at home and play blocks on the floor. It's a much more powerful feeling. And I think that people that don't have children, when they have the ability to, I'm not judging people who don't have the ability to, but if you have the ability and you choose to forego it, I think you're going to end up in massive regret. And I think it's going to create a societal contagion as well, where like, especially women who don't have any children. My wife said this to me the other day, and I thought it was incredibly profound. She said, women who don't have children will make other things their children. They will make immigrants their children. They will make their dog their children. They will make, you know, other people's kids their children. They will be teachers and attempt to indoctrinate other children, etc. Like, so it's like, I think that mothering impulse is still in you, even if you choose not to have children. And it comes out oftentimes in ways that are, you know, deleterious to the social fabric.
Yeah. I also think when you have children, you're also constantly confronted with yourself, right? Or like your level of development as an adult, as an individual, your spirit, however you want to define that, right? And like it's I feel it's like another chance to learn. Sometimes there are these moments where I realize, oh, this is something I missed along the way. Like I'm learning this now, right? Hey, this is not how I want to behave. I want to do it in a different way. You know, and like that is growth by itself. And I'm thinking about, you know, I talk a lot about like fiat money system forces you to be a consumer, right? And a Bitcoin money system invites you to be a builder. And I think just having children, building a family, or helping to build a literal person, an individual, right? For them to be self-sufficient later in life when you are dead, right? That is like the highest thing that you can build. And yeah, I agree with like the search for substitution. I mean, it makes sense if this is an innate urge that people have. Yeah, then something like that will happen. But as you said, like people who are traveling and drinking, think, yeah, you're being a consumer. You're being the good boy or girl, and you're being the consumer. You're fueling the thing that took this other thing away from you, basically. Like, that's crazy.
Me and Walker were talking on his podcast about the same kind of thing, about fatherhood, etc. And you know, there were like a couple of comments who were like, "Oh, look at the Bitcoin bros. They think they're the first people to discover fatherhood. Oh, well, good for you, bunch of think boys." You know, whatever. And it's like, listen, man, this is primary to the whole reason why we're here is because we care about the next generation, and the generation after us will care about that and subsequent, and it goes on forever. And I can't think of anything more primary or better to spend your time and your life and to have conversations about, rather than trying to, extol the virtues. In some sense, I think that Bitcoiners just give basically the same advice that your grandma would give you, which is
Yes,
like,
probably.
right? Like, save your money, go on walks, get more sunshine. You should be eating more meat. You should eat healthier, spend more time with your children, be a good father. Like, these are like, start a garden, get to know your local
Now,
community.
these are very radical thoughts nowadays.
Well, that's what your grandma would have told you, right? That's what my grandma told me. And
Yeah.
so in some sense, I feel like I'm just an old grandmother extolling this advice. And people are like, oh, what a right-wing radical you are, or whatever. It's like, dude, this is grandma shit. This is grandma shit. Okay.
Yeah. So, do you have any ideas about like what are kind of like the mechanisms or like cultural ideas or maybe like superstitions or something that like about money that influence how people behave nowadays?
I think in no small way,